Hello students. So today we are going to learn the fourth part of the chapter 7, plant growth and mineral nutrition. In this part of the chapter, we are going to learn mineral nutrition, source of minerals, classification of minerals, symptoms of mineral deficiency in plants, role of minerals and events in plants, mineral salt absorption, nitrogen cycle and nitrogen fixation. Now, the second slide, we can see simple animation showing seed germination, plantlet formation. On to the right side, you can see the periodic table, which already you must have learned, seen in chemistry. Here, I put up this chart so as to highlight the macronutrients and the micronutrients. The macronutrients, which is highlighted by green color, which includes carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. The micronutrients, which are highlighted with red color, that is Fe, iron, manganese, zinc, copper, boron, molybdenum and chlorine. Now, coming to the next slide, mineral nutrition. So as you can see on the right side, the chart which I added, or the image which I added, showing the light energy falling on the leaf, which helps in carrying out photosynthesis, the sugars which is supplied through the phloem content, water, minerals, the water vapors which is evaporated through the leaves through stomata, and from the root all these important micro and macronutrients which are absorbed and passed through the conducting system. Coming to the point, the first point, plant absorbs water, gases, mineral, nutrients, etc. from the surroundings. So as we can see in this chart, that is, the roots, they absorb the important minerals and nutrients from the soil, whereas the water, which is evaporated through the leaf through stomata, and the gases as well. Green plants, for the synthesis of their organic food, need inorganic substances which are obtained from soil in the form of minerals. Minerals constitute most commonly occurring solid inorganic materials obtained from the earth crust. So all the minerals are obtained from the earth crust, which is absorbed from the soil through the roots. Chemical analysis of plant ash clearly indicates that plant absorbs mineral elements from surrounding soil, air and water for its use. About 36 to 40 different elements of periodic table are used as minerals by plants. So, as we saw in the previous chart, that is the periodic table, the micro and macronutrients. So in all, at least 36 to 40 elements are required. So which is divided as the micro and the macronutrient. These are absorbed in ionic form as PO4, CO3, SO4, etc. That is either phosphates, sulfates, carbonates. Usually through roots, that is regions of elongation and growth. Now, moving further, sources of minerals. Plants derive necessary elements from the atmosphere, soil, and water. Carbon enters the plants as atmospheric carbon dioxide. So, as we know, all the important things, that is, the elements, are taken up from the atmosphere or from the soil, and it is usually the minerals, they are present in the water which is absorbed through the root, and the carbon which is present is taken as the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere. Source of hydrogen is water and oxygen comes from air and water. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen are not minerals in origin. So the CHO, that is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, they are not found directly as the minerals. Source of nitrogen is the soil. So the nitrogen component are obtained from the soil, maybe not in the direct form, maybe with other compounds. Plants derives nitrogen from both mineral and non-mineral origin. So they can be obtained either way, in the form of mineral which are present in the soil, or non-mineral origin, which we can consider like atmospheric nitrogen, which is present almost 71 percentage, right, or 78% is the maximum which is obtained through the atmosphere, but it has to be converted into nitrite and nitrates. So you can see here again I added image and the animation showing water minerals which are absorbed through the root. Root take up oxygen and gives out carbon dioxide. Again, transport of water minerals as xylem sap. Xylem sap pulled up due to the transpiration process. So water is evaporated. Sugars are produced by the photosynthesis in the leaf by chlorophyll. Carbon and oxygen exchange through the stomata or the opening of the stomata. So here in the animation you can see a simple photosynthesis overview. Water minerals absorbed through the root. Carbon dioxide which is taken from the atmosphere through the leaf. Glucose, that is sugar, formed in the leaf by the process of photosynthesis. The light energy which is taken up along with the carbon dioxide which acts as a raw material, the water which is absorbed through the root, and it takes place in the leaf, that is by the help of the plastate chlorophyll. Further, classification of minerals. So on the basis of their requirement, minerals were classified as essential and non-essential. That is the one which is more important and one which is less important. Essential minerals are those that are indispensable, without which plants cannot complete their life cycle. Example, CHO, as we already learned earlier. These elements play structural and physiological roles. Their absence can cause major deficiency symptoms. So the CHONP, that is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other macronutrients, also the micronutrients, they play important part the growth of the plant, either in different ways, that is the flowering, fruiting, the formation of various components. So it is very important. In the absence of these elements, it can cause deficiency. So in other words, the flowering, fruiting may not take place, or the bolting, that is the leaves may wither. The non-essential elements are not indispensable. They do not cause any deficiency symptoms. This classification is obsolete now. That is, the non-essential, if they are not present or present in minute amount, they don't affect the plants or they don't cause any deficiency. Based on the quantity requirement, minerals as minor or microelements and major as macroelements. So as we know, the essential elements, they can be put into the minor or major, or microelements and the macroelements, which you have learned in the previous slide through the periodic table. So the microelements are required in traces, as the name micro, minute, because they function in catalytic role. Now what is, students, catalytic or catalysis? That is, these elements help in the growth or increase the rate of reaction without itself involving in it, but their presence matters. So zinc, copper, aluminium and silica, etc., as cofactors. Macroelements are required in large number, so they mainly play the nutritive and structural role. Example, CHOP, MgN, KS, etc. Again, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, magnesium, nitrogen, potassium, sulfur, etc. So CHO are non-mineral major elements. These classifications now accepted now. Nowadays, minerals are classified on the basis of their biochemical function. So now the further classification earlier based on the presence, based on the constituents. Now it is based on the biochemical function. So again I added an image over here or chart over here showing the essential elements, major or the macro, trace or the micro. So you can see here carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, sulfur and magnesium, whereas the micro, iron, chlorine, manganese, zinc, copper, boron and molybdenum. Now, moving further, a little bit of information. So I am adding all the information also because this information helps us to learn more about how the things were known, how it came into existence, how it was identified, and also the scientists who were instrumental in identifying these things. So here, know the scientist. Criteria for essentiality of elements was proposed by Arnon and Stout in the year 1939. The elements must be absolutely necessary for supporting normal growth and reproduction. So these elements, if they are present, they help in the growth and reproduction. These elements must be having specific function and should not be replaceable by another element. The elements must be directly involved in the nutrition of plant. In an element, if an element satisfies all the above three criteria, it is considered to be essential element. That is, if the presence of elements helps in the growth factor, reproduction factor, flowering, fruiting, etc., that means they are important one and they cannot be replaced. They are essential ones. Further, do you know? Lieberg showed the essentiality of mineral nutrients and put forth the law of minimum. According to this law, the yield of crop plant is determined by the amount of essential element that is present in minimum quantity. That is, the elements which are required as a micronutrient or required in small amounts. Here further, you can see Stout and Arnon added their images over here. Here, as Lieberg showed the law of minimum, just to explain it, just as von Lieberg's law of minimum, which was published in 1873, if one growth factor or nutrient is deficient, plant growth is limited. Even if all other vital factors, nutrients are adequate, plant growth is improved by increasing the supply of deficient factor or the micronutrient. That is, all the nutrients are essential in one form or the other, in one way or the other. If any of these things are missing or not present, that can affect the growth. So all essential nutrients, whether it's micro and macro, both are required in the proper proportion. If any of these elements are missing, that can affect the growth factor. Now, coming to the next part, that is symptoms of mineral deficiency in the plants. Any visible deviation from the normal structure and function of the plant is called symptom or hunger sign. The concentration of the essential elements below which plant growth is retarded is termed as critical concentration. So as we have learned or learning, that is, the deficiency of any of the minerals can cause various problems to the growth, or it can affect the growth. So it is a symptom, that is this function or the structure may be affected with the absence of this particular mineral, or it is a symptom or a hunger sign as mentioned over here. So in the absence of this, the growth may be affected or retarded. So that particular situation where it is affected or retarded, it is a critical concentration. Deficiency of symptoms also depend on the mobility of the elements in the plants. The deficiency in symptoms appear first in young tissues when the elements are relatively immobile. Example, sulfur and calcium. So initially the symptoms can be seen which may appear in the younger plants or younger tissues present. So the important elements such as the sulfur and the calcium. When elements are actively mobilized within the plants and exposed to the young developing tissue, the deficiency symptoms are visible first in the older tissue, that is senescent leaves. Example, nitrogen, magnesium, potassium. Some important deficiency symptoms seen in the plants are: first one, stunting. Now just coming back to the earlier point, nitrogen, magnesium, potassium, if these elements are lesser, they can cause senescence, means the older tissues or leaves, they start falling. So stunting, the growth is retarded, means the growth does not take place. That is, plants may not grow, the internodes may be short, so the height may be affected. So stem appears condensed and short. That is stunting. Chlorosis. It is a loss of non-development of chlorophyll resulting in the yellowing of leaves. That is, if the chlorophyll pigment is absent, then in that case what happens is the leaves starts to become yellow. That is, yellowing of leaves takes place. that is chlorosis, in the absence of chlorophyll. Necrosis, it is the localized death of the tissues of the leaves. So in case of necrosis, the tissues may die away in the leaves. Molting or mottling, appearance of green and non-green patches on the leaf. So mottling may take place if the that is the leaf may be green, where it will be not completely, there may be patches in between. As in chlorosis, it will be completely changed from green to yellow. Here there may be patches in between. Abscission, premature falling of flowers, fruits and leaves. So in the presence of uh, excess of abscisic acid, the abscission may take place, or the abscission, that is nothing but falling of flowers, fruits and the leaves. Now I added the table over here from the textbook, that is 7.10, roles of mineral elements in plants. So here the elements: nitrogen in the form of nitrate and nitrates or ammonia, everywhere they are present in the meristematic tissue. The functions, that is consist of proteins, nucleic acids, vitamins, hormones, coenzymes, ATP, chlorophyll. Deficiency of these may cause stunted growth, chlorosis, as we just learned the some of the important deficiency symptoms. Phosphorus in the form of phosphoric acid. So younger tissues obtains from older metabolically less active cells. What is the function? Constituents of cell membrane, certain proteins, all nucleic acids and nucleotides required for all phosphorylation reaction. So deficiency, poor growth, leaves dull green. So here students, again I added two images. One is a simple picture showing the plant growth where important nutrients, macro and micro, present in the soil. Second one, how the seeds they germinate, the roots moving in the downward direction for the absorption of nutrients, minerals, water, whereas the seeds germinate sprouting out the plantlet. Further, other elements such as potassium. So here it is the meristematic tissue, helps in determining anion cation balance in the cells, involving in protein synthesis, involving in the formation of cell membrane and in opening and closing of stomata, increase hardness, activates enzymes and helps in maintenance of turgidity of the cells, which is the function in case of the potassium. What will be the symptoms? Yellow edges to the leaves, premature death in case potassium is absent. Further, calcium. Meristematic and differentiating tissues accumulates in the older leaf. Involved in selective permeability of the cell membranes, activate certain enzymes required for the development of the stem and root apex as calcium pectate in the middle lamellae of the cell wall. In the absence of calcium, stunted growth. Further, magnesium, leaves withdrawn from aging leaves and exported to the developing seeds. The functions: activates enzymes in the phosphates, metabolism, constituent of chlorophyll, maintains ribosome structure. In the absence, symptom, that is chlorosis. Sulfur, stem and root tips, young leaves remobilize during senescence. Constituent of certain proteins, vitamins, that is thiamine, biotin, CoA and ferredoxin. Again, it causes chlorosis similar to magnesium, that is in the absence. Then iron everywhere carries along leaf veins. Constituents of ferredoxin and cytochrome activates catalase required for synthesis of chlorophyll. Again, in the absence, cause chlorosis. So if you see, in the absence of magnesium, sulfur, iron, one of the major symptom seen is chlorosis. Further, manganese. Leaves and seeds activate certain enzymes, carboxylases. Again, in the absence, chlorosis, gray spots on leaves. Then molybdenum everywhere, particularly in the roots, activates certain enzymes in the nitrogen metabolism. Slight retardation of growth in the absence of molybdenum. Further, boron. Leaves and seeds required for uptake and utilization of calcium ions, pollen germination and cell differentiation, carbohydrate translocation. The symptoms, brown heart disease. Further, copper present everywhere, that is throughout the plant, activates certain enzymes, dieback of shoots, which further forms the stem part. Then zinc, again present everywhere, activates various enzymes, especially carboxylase, part of carbonic anhydrase and various dehydrogenase needed for auxin synthesis. Malform red leaves, that is in case of the absence of zinc. Chlorine, again it is present everywhere. With sodium and potassium helps to determine solute concentration and anion cation balance in cells, essential for oxygen evolution in photosynthesis. Symptoms, that is poor growth of the plants. So this chart, students, it is present in the textbook. So we can come to know if in the absence of individual element, each can cause various disease or symptoms. So you can see in the absence of these micro or macro elements how the plants may get affected. So next time at home, if you are having various plants or gardens, so you can come to know that certain changes in the plant nature behavior, that is the bolting of leaves or senescence or spots in the leaf. So what type of deficiency the plants are having, right? Okay. Further, do you know constituents of protoplasm and cell walls CHO NPS are important and permanent constituents of the protoplasm and the cell wall. So the constituents of protoplasm cell wall, which is very much important. So these elements which are mentioned, CHO, NPS, they are important for the protoplasm and cell wall. Osmotic potential, the second one, osmotic pressure of cell is a result of mineral salts and organic compound dissolved in the cell sap. Third, catalytic function. Many elements like iron, copper, zinc, magnesium, manganese, chlorine, etc. act as catalysts in various enzyme reaction of plant metabolism. So even in plant metabolism, catalysts are required, and so they can carry out various metabolic activities. Further, permeability of cytoplasmic membrane. Permeability of membrane is influenced by the presence of various cations and anions of the mineral ions in the external medium like calcium and potassium. Further, composition of energy related to chemical compounds, phosphorus in ATP and magnesium in chlorophyll. So these important points can help us to understand the finer aspects of the elements which are present. Do you know? Further, the atmospheric carbon dioxide is virtually the only source of carbon, which is basic constituent of all the organic compounds. So as you know, students, one of the important elements, carbon, which is present in each and every living organism. So in case of plants, the carbon dioxide which is available in the atmosphere is one of the major source, or you can say the major source for carbon. Here I added an image over here showing the fossil fuels, where the plants, animals may be uh, present dead for after a long period of time for forming the fossils. Earth crust, soil, the plants, burning of fossil fuel, soil respiration, photosynthesis, volcanic activities, deforestation, land use change, ocean uptake, ocean loss. So just an image showing the overall aspect in case of the plant growth. Now students, here added again few images showing aeroponics. You can see how this functions. Here a diagram of the hydroponic system. Now when you say hydroponic, hydro means water. So how plants can be grown with the help of water instead of soil. So presently this is one of the methods which can be employed for the growth of the plant where soil availability is less. So without soil we can provide the important nutrients and minerals artificially, and which can be used in growth of the plant. So you can see how the technique works, and here how the plant growth takes place in the soil, how it can be carried out. Now further, toxicity of micronutrients. Now when you say toxicity, that is if any of the particular element may inhibit or and the absence or some other constituent may be mixed with it, or it can affect the growth of the plant. So mineral iron concentration which reduces the dry weight of tissues by 10% is considered as toxic. I repeat the statement: mineral iron concentration which reduces the dry weight of the tissues by 10 percentage, that means it is considered as toxic. Toxicity of one element may inhibit the uptake of other. So here students, we can say that certain elements, if it is present more in amount, that stops or inhibits the uptake of other elements, or there is a competition between the elements, or it stops the intake of other elements or affects the uptake of other elements. So here manganese competes with iron Mg for uptake but inhibits calcium translocation to the shoot apex. Thus manganese toxicity develops deficiency of calcium, magnesium and iron. So students, here toxicity where manganese, if there it is present in excess, so it does not allow the intake of calcium, magnesium and iron, and in that case it affects the growth of the plants, or deficiency caused because of absence of these elements. So they are competing also against each other. The presence of excessive available amount of certain minerals in the soil can lead to mineral toxicity to the plants. So not necessary there may be some unwanted elements present, but certain elements if it is present in excess, even that can lead to toxicity. The extent of injury depends on the mineral, its concentration and the species of the plant. So it may affect the overall aspect, that is which species it is, how much concentration it is, how much amount of minerals it is present in it. Further, third point here, plant in this photo as shown has received too much of copper which has proved toxic and led to yellowing. So you can see here in this plant more copper is present. So it has prevented uptake of other elements, thereby causing yellowishness of the plant. Students, here I added one more chart which helps to understand the deficiency of different elements with the help of the image as well. So you can see deficiency chart of micronutrients. Boron, discoloration of leaf buds, breaking and dropping of buds, drooping of buds. Sulfur, leaves light green, veins pale green, no spots, which you can see. So with the image we can easily recollect and remember. Manganese, leaves pale in color, veins and venules dark green and reticulated. Zinc, leaves pale, narrow and short veins, dark green, dark spots on the leaves. as shown. Magnesium, paleness from the leaf edges, no spots, edges have cup-shaped folds, leaves die and drop in extreme deficiency, which you can see in this particular example of the leaf. Phosphorus, plant short and dark green, in extreme deficiency turn brown or black, bronze color under the leaf. Then calcium, plant dark green in color, tender leaves, pale, drying starts from the tips, eventually leaf buds dry or die away. Iron, leaves pale, no spots, major veins green, copper pale pink between the veins, wilt and drop. Molybdenum, leaves light green, lemon yellow, orange, spots on whole leaf except veins, sticky secretions from under the leaf. Potassium, small spots on the tips, edges of pale leaves, spots turn rusty, folds at the tip. Nitrogen, stunted growth, extreme pale color, upright leaves with light green or yellowish appear burnt in the extreme deficiency. So these are the symptoms which you can relate with the coloration of the leaf or a plant shown over here. Now moving further, that is mineral salts absorption. Mineral ion absorption can occur in two ways. One is passive absorption and second will be active. So passive absorption, movement of mineral ions into the root occurs by diffusion. Molecules or ions diffuse from a region of lower concentration. So movement of minerals into the root cells as a result of diffusion is without expenditure of energy. That is why it is called as passive absorption. So students, as a name passive, they are absorbed by diffusion, and diffusion, the region where lower concentration, it moves to the higher concentration. As the movement takes place, there is no expenditure of energy, so the resultant movement takes place by simple diffusion. So there is no utilization of energy, hence it is passive. If the energy is utilized or if energy is required, then it will be active. So passive absorption can take place by direct ion exchange. In direct ion exchange, mass flow and Donan equilibrium takes place. So you can see again I added an image related to that topic, where a section of the plant, xylem and the phloem, carbohydrates which are taken up, water and minerals. Water and carbohydrates travel to all parts of the plant. So you can see how the uptake takes place, water and minerals, how the movement takes place from the root to the various parts of the plants. Again here, section of the plant, xylem, spongy mesophyll layer, you can see the inner components. Here again, the carbohydrates, water and minerals uptake is shown. Now, just now we learned in the later part Donan equilibrium. So what is this? It is based on the assumption that certain negatively charged ions after their entry into the cell become fixed on the inner side of the cell membrane and cannot diffuse outside through the cell membrane. Therefore, additional mobile cations are required to balance these fixed anions. Obviously, concentration of cations become more due to accumulation. This kind of passive absorption of anions or cations from the cell exterior against their own concentration gradient in order to neutralize the effect of cations or anions is called Donan equilibrium. So students, from the simple statement, it is very clear what is this Donan equilibrium. As you know, it takes place in passive absorption. So in passive absorption, it absorbs what? Anions and cations from the exterior part against their own concentration. So it neutralizes the effect of the cations and anions. Now, the second one, active absorption. Uptake of mineral ions against concentration gradient is called active absorption. Such movement requires an expenditure of energy by the absorption of cell. The energy is derived from respiration and is supplied through ATP. When the roots are deprived of oxygen, they show a sudden drop in active absorption. The mineral ions accumulate in the root hair, pass it into the cortex and finally reach the xylem. So Students, now you know active absorption, it is against the concentration gradient. So naturally, for this movement to take place, it requires energy. So that is why it is active. Now, how this energy obtained? By the respiration process. As you know, during respiration process, ATP is formed. So this ATP helps in the carrying out the process by providing energy. Now, in case if the oxygen level decreases, so the active absorption may decrease. So these ions may accumulate in the root hair and slowly it will pass on to the cortex and then they reach the xylem. Now, further, the minerals in the xylem are then carried along with water to other parts of the plant along the transpiration stream and are subsequently assimilated into organic molecules and then redistributed to the other parts of the plant through phloem. So here students, in the later part of this point, what it says is minerals in the xylem, that is to the water. As we know, xylem conducts water. So the minerals which may be dissolved in the water through the process of transpiration and or along with the transpiration, it may move and get assimilated into the organic molecule and thus it gets distributed to the other parts through phloem. As you might have seen in the previous chapter, I had added few animation where even there is an interaction between xylem and the phloem components. Now, some facts do you know? To explain active absorption of minerals, Hogland and Davis in the year 1923 put forth carrier hypothesis to explain this how the absorption takes place. Second, specific proteins in the membrane of root cells actively pump ions in the cytoplasm of the epidermal roots. These proteins are called carriers that pump both cations and anions from the soil. So according to Bennett and Clark in the year 1956, protein conjugated with lecithin which acts as a carrier. So here I added the images of the scientists Hoagland, Davis, Bennett, Clark so that we can know who are these scientists actually. Now next, coming to the nitrogen cycle. Now, up till now, we have learned different minerals, macro and micro, how the movement takes place, active, passive. Now, the nitrogen cycle. It is a series of natural process by which nitrogen enters successively from air to organism through soil and back to the environment. Plants use photosynthesis product, the sugars, to make proteins. To do this, they need nitrogen. Unfortunately, it is very inert. Plants need nitrogen in reactive form, usually as nitrate ions. So as we know, nitrogen is also important component or a macronutrient which is required. So they may be taking through the soil or it is present in the atmosphere. But it is not available directly or it cannot be taken up directly. So it is usually present in the form of nitrate ions. Nitrogen is a limiting nutrient in agricultural ecosystem. It exists as nitrogen atoms with a triple covalent bond. So you can see the nitrogen triple bond, that is N2. A regular supply of nitrogen to the plants is maintained through biological and physical process. So the image of the nitrogen cycle is just may put over here, posted over here. So you can see how the cyclic process takes place. So you can see the atmospheric nitrogen, they may be passing on as a non-biological nitrogen fixation, nitrates in the soil, biological nitrogen fixation, or denitrifying bacteria in the soil. So these are the various ways which can help in taking up the nitrogen. Further, nitrates and nitrites in the soil. Here, ammonia, nitrogen, which is taken up by the commercial fertilizers in the soil or which takes up by the plant, amino acids in the plants, plant proteins, or the animals which eat up the plants, the excreta, or after the death, the nitrogenous components are again back into the soil, whether it is the animal or the plant. When they die, after their death, all the components present in the body, they decompose and they come to the soil. So again, they form the released by the ammonifying bacteria in the soil and further ammonia is present in the soil and again it is passed on to the plants or by nitrifying bacteria into the soil. Now, nitrogen fixation. So, atmosphere is a source of nitrogen. It cannot be used directly. It combines with CHN and O to form compounds before they being used. Conversion of free nitrogen, that is N2, of the atmosphere into nitrogenous salts to make it available for the plants is called nitrogen fixation. So, students, as we are learning about the macronutrients, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, which are present in the atmosphere. So they may be not available directly, but they may present or take up different forms or compounds before they are being utilized. So this free nitrogen has also been converted from the atmosphere into the nitrogenous component. So which is done by nitrogen fixation. So it is of two types. One is physical and biological. So you can see the nitrification process by nitrosomonas or nitrobacter, which helps in the conversion. So ammonia, the nitrate, nitrite, all these are converted from one form to other by denitrification. Here again, you can see another image which I added over here for your understanding. By volcanic eruptions from the atmosphere, how from the factories, industries, which is released, or by the ammonia which is present in the soil by the nitrification process with the help of various bacteria like nitrobacteria, nitrosomonas, how they are decomposed, and from the soil it is taken up into the plants. Further, physical nitrogen fixation, that is the nitrogen cycle. So again, I added another image showing how this nitrogen cycle takes place. So nitrogen fixation, there is nitrogen in the atmosphere is fixed or from the animal protein. So here the nitrites which are present, which actually are obtained from ammonia. Ammonia from decomposes, they are released by ammonification, by nitrification as nitrite, and this by again nitrification in presence of nitrifying bacteria, nitrates are formed from nitrites, and this again by the nitrogen fixing bacteria or denitrifying bacteria, they get assimilated and they absorb into the plants. So here chart from the text, that is physical nitrogen fixation, it occurs in several steps and starts with combination of atmospheric nitrogen with oxygen under the influence of electric discharge and thunderstorm produce nitric oxide. So N2 plus O2. So you can see the nitrogen fixation with the thunderstorm forming nitric oxide. The nitric oxide is then oxidized to nitrogen peroxide in the presence of oxygen. So 2NO plus O2 by oxidation forms nitrogen peroxide. During rains, the nitrogen peroxide combines with rainwater to form nitrous acid and nitric acid, which come to ground along with rain. So the nitrogen peroxide along with the rain, when they come down, they form nitrous acid, that is HNO3, and nitric acid. On ground, the alkali radicals of soil react with this nitric acid to produce nitrites and nitrates. So HNO3 plus calcium or potassium salts form calcium or potassium nitrates. Industrial nitrogen fixation also occurs. It occurs by Haber-Bosch nitrate process at high temperature and pressure. So nitrogen plus hydrogen in at a high temperature of 450 degrees centigrade at 200 atmospheres, ammonia is formed. This ammonia is converted to urea, which is less toxic. Like you have learned in the chapter excretion osmoregulation, one of the nitrogenous excretory products urea, which is secreted by all the mammals, humans, etc. Now, the other method, biological nitrogen fixation. So here in biological nitrogen fixation, it is carried out by prokaryotes called as nitrogen fixers or diesotropes. Students, remember the term nitrogen fixers, that is diesotropes. It accounts nearly 70% of natural or nitrogen fixation. All the natural fixation of the nitrogen, 70% is done by these nitrogen fixers. So nitrogen fixers are either symbiotic, that is in association with the other factor, or free living. The cyanobacteria fix significant amount of nitrogen in specialized cells called heterocyst. Nitrogen fixation is high energy requiring process, and nitrogen fixes using 16 molecules of ATP to fix each molecule of nitrogen to form ammonia. So nitrogen plus hydrogen ions plus the electrons and 16 ATP forms ammonia in presence of hydrogen. ADP, that is ATP, is broken down into ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and inorganic phosphate. Ammonia is then converted into amino acid. So again, for the explanation of this biological fixation, again I added another image showing the biological nitrogen fixation. So if you consider nitrogen in the atmosphere, here the ammonium, that is ammonia, NH4, by nitrification, it in presence of denitrifying bacteria forms nitrates. Also, these nitrates become nitrates by the nitrifying bacteria, and by denitrifying bacteria, it is again sent to the atmosphere. At the same time, here the nitrogen fixing bacteria in the root nodules of legume, the nitrogen fixing soil bacteria, here ammonification taking place, that is decomposes aerobic and anaerobic bacteria and fungi, assimilation takes place, and again here again the nitrates which are formed from the nitrates, which again assimilates and is taken up by the plants. Now, nitrification. Most of the soil bacteria participate in converting ammonia into nitrate, as we have seen in the earlier slides. The form of nitrogen which can be used by plants and animals, this involves two steps performed by two different types of bacteria. First, a soil bacteria convert ammonia into nitrogen dioxide, that is nitrite, example Nitrosomonas and Nitrosococcus. So ammonia and oxygen, they form in presence of Nitrosomonas and Nitrosococcus forms HNO2 plus 2H2, that is water molecules are released. Then another type of soil bacterium called Nitrobacter adds a third oxygen to atoms to create nitrate. So here we can see formation of nitric acid from HNO2 and O2 by Nitrobacter. Again students, remember the examples: Nitrosomonas, Nitrosococcus, that is a bacteria which helps in conversion, Nitrobacter. So these bacteria are chemoautotrophics, that is they can carry out the process of photosynthesis, which is by light, but here by chemical. So chemoautotrophs. By mobilizing nitrogen along with oxygen, they obtain energy to power their own life process. Further, symbiotic nitrogen fixation. Now the term symbiotic means with the help of another bacterium or with combination. So the best known nitrogen fixing symbiotic bacterium is Rhizobium. This soil living bacterium forms root nodules in plants belong to family Fabaceae, example beans, gram, ground, nut, etc. So they form the symbiotic association with the root nodules. That is, this rhizobium, that is nitrogen fixing bacteria, they are present in the root nodules, which helps in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, whereas they get free accommodation and food by presenting in the plant root region, forming the root nodules. Further, ammonification. After the death of plants and animals, various fungi, actinomycetes, and some ammonifying bacteria decompose the tissue and convert organic nitrogen into amino acids, then to ammonia, and back into ecosystem. Ammonia is now available for uptake by plants and other microorganisms for growth. So the ammonification process, that is the ammonia which is formed again by the bacteria which decompose all the organic bacteria into amino acid. So this process which is carried out helps uh, for the availability of ammonia, and this is again taken up by the plants and microorganisms. So you can see a proteins, they are broken down into amino acids by microbial decomposition. This amino acid is further broken down to ammonia and organic acid. So again I added another image showing how this ammonification in the nitrogen cycle taking place. So if you see here, the ammonia which is formed from the decomposers further forming ammonium further by nitrosomonas bacteria or by nitrification. The nitrate and the nitrites are formed. The denitrifying bacteria again releases the nitrogen, or the animals and plants, when they die, it is again decomposed into the soil, which is again taken by the decomposers, the bacteria and the fungi, which is again absorbed from the soil back into the plants. Then next, nitrogen assimilation. In soil, nitrogen is present as nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia. It is absorbed by the green plants and converted to nitrogenous organic compounds like amino acids, DNA, etc. It is known as nitrogen assimilation. So what is this nitrogen assimilation? The nitrogen which is further present or converted into nitrate, nitrates, ammonia is absorbed by the plants and then converted to nitrogenous organic compound, which again, as we learned in the earlier slide, formation of amino acids and DNA. So this assimilation is termed as a nitrogen assimilation. From plants, nitrogen as biomolecule like amino acids enter food chain and moves to animals and then to decomposers through the death of the animal. Second, the earlier two images which I added, you can see in that how the step by step nitrogen molecule which is present is converted into amino acids, which enters a food chain, which is taken up by the plants, animals, which is again decomposed after the death of the plants and the animals. The nitrates and the first converted to ammonia, but which is highly toxic and immediately used for conversion into amino acid, which are then transported to other parts of the plants for synthesis of protein. So you can see the nitrate and nitrites in presence of electrons, hydrogen, they are converted into nitrite and water molecule is released along with formation of ammonium and water molecule. So you can see here photosynthetic products, the TCA cycle, which you might have learned in that is tricarboxylic acid in respiration, photosynthesis. Here you can see the various processes which takes place, that is by photorespiration, ammonium which is formed by biological nitrogen fixation, the nitrate and nitrates which is uh, taken up from the soil. Further, it forms a glutamate, aspargine, various amino acids are formed. These amino acids are further converted into proteins and nucleotides. Next, amino acid synthesis. So amino acids are building blocks of proteins, as we know, which forms the important part of the proteins and which forms the uh, building blocks whereby the proteins are formed. Or as we have learned in the translation transcription process, how the proteins are formed, right? So here the amino acids which are important as they form the proteins. So the chain of amino acids forming the proteins. The amino acids are synthesized through redu reduction amination. This ammonia reacts with alpha ketogluteric acid to form glutamic acid, that is glutamate. So again from the text I added the reaction, that is alpha ketogluteric acid and ammonium, that is along with NADPH, an enzyme glutamate dehydrogenase forms glutamate and H2 and NADP is formed simultaneously. Transamination, that is amino acid or amino group of one amino acid is transferred to keto position of other carboxyl acid. So glutamic acid plus oxaloacetic acid forming alpha ketogluteric acid and aspartic acid, again in the presence of glutamic aspartate and amino transferase, the enzymes which are present helps in the conversion. Amides. Ammonia may be absorbed by amino acid to produce amides. The process is called amidation. The amides are the amino acids having two amino groups. Extra amino group is attached to the acidic group in presence of ATP, glutamic acid plus ammonium plus ATP, and alpha glutamine is formed along with the ADP, that is ATP is broken down to ADP. Aspartic acid in presence of ammonium and energy, that is in the form of ATP, forms aspargine, and ADP is broken down from ATP. Amides like aspargine and glutamine are formed from glutamic acid and aspartic acid. From the names you can very clearly relate glutamic acid forming glutamine, aspartic acid forming aspargine, respectively by the addition of another amino acid group to each. Amides are transported to other parts of the plants by the xylem vessels, which conducts water. So along with that, it is conductor further. Denitrification. It is a process in which anaerobic bacteria can convert soil nitrates back into nitrogenous gas. Denitrifying bacteria removes fixed nitrogen, that is nitrates, from the ecosystem and return it to the atmosphere in inert form. Denitrifying bacteria includes Bacillus species, Paracoccus species, and Pseudomonas denitrificans. They transform nitrates to nitrous and nitric oxides, and ultimately the formation of gaseous nitrogen released into the atmosphere. Sedimentation. The nitrates of the soil are washed away to the sea or leached deep into the earth along with percolating water. So students, that ends with the fourth part as well as the chapter. So based on the fourth part which you have learned now, the questions 1 mark, short notes, and the answer in brief for 3 or 4 marks, the possible ones. And 3 or 4 mark students, it can be the nitrogen cycle or the biological nitrogen fixation, or how the microorganism, particularly the bacteria, plays an important role in the transformation, are the important major questions which can come for 3 or 4 marks along with the 1 and 2 marks. So hopefully the fourth part as well as the earlier three parts are clear for you. With the help of the charts or animation images, it becomes easier for your learning. So thank you students.